Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Coast to Coast. I'm Crina Mustafa alongside Calvin Wetzel, and today we say happy birthday to the show. It is officially 1 year of Coast to Coast. We were kind of just like messing around, and I checked out the dates, and our first episode was on August 23rd of last year. You're listening to this on August 22nd. You may be listening to this on August 23rd if you're listening to it a day late, but either way, that's close enough. A big happy first birthday to Coast to Coast. Really, really fun time. Cal, thoughts on doing this podcast for 1 year now?
It's been such a blast. Obviously, this is like one of my highlights of my week every week. And I just want to say, I'm so hyped for all the birthday energy we've had because we had your birthday a week ago. Now we have the Coast to Coast birthday. It's just birthday month in August, and I'm here for it.
I'm kind of biased towards August birthdays, so I'm gonna say it's the best month to have a birthday in. But I appreciate that very much. Very, very like cool to think about that. Because it feels like we just started, but also not. Like it also feels long ago. So, yeah, happy first birthday to Coast to Coast. We're gonna get into a lot today. It was trade deadline week, and as always, teams love to do things right down to the last minute. And that's what we got. We're also going to talk about some of the top teams in the league, catch up with them after the Olympic break, and then we're going to get into our games to watch for the week. Cal, are you ready?
I'm so ready. This time of year, like the regular season's getting to crunch time, and like all these trades and different things are happening. Like the league feels like it's heating up. Feels like it's getting good. I'm ready
It
for it.
is. It is. And we've been talking about this time, I feel like on the podcast for like the last couple of months where we're getting excited for the end. And now we're like in that final, like there's 1 month left of the regular season, that final kind of push towards the playoffs. But some big news happened this week. Our headline of the week. Gabby Williams is back to the Seattle Storm. Obviously, played fantastic in the Paris Olympics for France. Nail biter of a loss to Team USA. Like, I literally still feel like sick for Gabby after her foot was on the line for that last shot. But she is back with the Storm. We kind of talked a little bit about like prioritization and things like that. I have a couple of like notes that I kind of want to get into this with you. How does Gabby, first of all, how does she fit back with this team? Obviously, being familiar with Seattle already.
Yeah, it's great, and obviously, like you said, she's played there before, and like played with Jewel, played with his franchise, and she's just a player who like fits this team perfectly in what they need because she can defend different positions, she can run the floor, she can space if needed, she can score, but she doesn't like need to be a ball dominant player to score because Jewel is kind of your ball dominant player. You have your point guard and Skylar. Obviously, like you have your front court solidified with NECA and Ezzy holding it down on both ends, really. And then Gabby just slots in there really perfectly. And I love what Jordan Horston has done all year. I think she's been extremely improved and like a really under the radar story. And I think her off the bench is gonna make Seattle's second unit that much more dangerous. So I love this fit perfectly. I think like Gabby, it kind of sounded like it was coming down to New York and Seattle, and she probably would have fit in New York pretty well too. She is kind of that player that like fits anywhere just because of who she is. She's so versatile. She's a Swiss Army knife. So it'll be weird to say that like she didn't fit with any team because she can kind of just mold herself into like whatever you need her to be. But I think in particular with the Storm, it's just like an absolute match made in heaven, and it's a cool reunion to see, and especially like as things are heating up. Like we said, last month of the regular season, everyone's making that push. This is, a lot of teams made trades, but the Storm, this is their way of making that push.
Yeah, I think it adds a lot of depth for them for sure, especially if you look at kind of how they've done since they've been back from the break. They lost a big game against the Indiana Fever. The Fever had a big win against them, and then they barely got past Washington. So, like, I feel like if you want to be in that contender conversation in which we've put Seattle in multiple times throughout the course of the season, I think getting Gabby to sign rest of the season contract is going to help them so much moving forward with having that depth and being able to rely on different versatile pieces for your roster. And yeah, the familiarity just like really helps a lot too. I'm curious because, we talked about prioritization, we talked about players kind of choosing to play overseas, which is what Gabby did. How did the Olympics this summer kind of help with maybe getting some of these players to come back to the league for the second half of the season?
Yeah, it raised her profile a lot, obviously, because we all saw that gold medal game, and even throughout the Olympics, she was great. I don't, but again, like it was so cool to see the Olympics kind of like vault her into this, whether it was about that or not, like vault her into this signing into this next step.
Yeah, for sure. And we even talked about like all the W players that went on Twitter and were like trying to recruit Gabby to come join their teams after. So Seattle won that one, and I'm excited to see her back with that team. Some other trades did happen as well too. Washington had a ton of movement around the trade deadline, which I it's also at like 8 p.m. Eastern rather than like 5 p.m. Eastern, which I was like, this is so weird. Like this is during the games. But hey, teams love to do things to the last minute, so go with it. But they
League in a
do,
league, right? WNBA in a
yeah.
WNBA.
Yeah, exactly. They get Shug Sutton, as well as a 2025 third round pick for some player rights with Phoenix. Then they did another trade as well. They received Sika Kone, a 2026 second round pick. They waived both Ipupa, who they got from the Lynx in the trade, as well as Maisha Hines Allen. She's on her way to Minnesota. And they waived Dee Dee Richards. And it came out later after that Dee Dee's actually getting surgery for a chronic Achilles problem that's been bothering her. And Eric Tebow said something like she's going to stick around, even though like they waived her, which I find a little bit interesting because I originally saw that she got waived and I was like, damn, like I'm really sad for Dee Dee. You and I are both huge fans of her. We kind of talked about, her kind of going in and out of the league right now. I hope that she has a very speedy recovery, and I'm very interested to see, like how I guess Washington wants to just like sign her back as soon as she's like better. Like, is it like I'm very confused about that part because I'm like, can't would she be able to go on some like injury reserve type of thing, or like I don't know what happened there, but maybe you have some other thoughts on that, Kel.
Yeah, I also need to brush up on this part of the CBA on the injury stuff because it's
That's
another.
weird, right? Like she's just like waiting around but not signed. Like that's the vibes that I got.
Yeah, and I don't fully understand all the details of, like, how that works either in terms of
Mhm.
the, like, CBA and the salary and the contracts and all of that. It's, one of these days I'm gonna read, like, every word of that CBA FAQ that we have on her Hoop Stats. Gonna sit down, and I'm just gonna, like, teach it maybe I'm not. I say that.
Go read it and then go to our YouTube comments
Yeah.
and explain it to us. How
You
about
guys
that?
should go read it. All our listeners should go read it. If you have like a free Saturday, go read it. It's great. It really is like very helpful. But I will admit I haven't read it all, so I don't know how this works.
Yeah. Any thoughts about any of that movement? Maybe like seeing what Maisha Hines Allen, what her fit is like with Minnesota now. Yeah. Any thoughts on some of that movement and Washington getting Sika Kone as well?
Yeah, and Shug Sutton. I'm very interested. We'll
Hmm.
talk more about the Maisha, moving a little bit. I like that one for the Lynx a lot. From the Mystics perspective, like anytime you can acquire, I'll say semi high ceiling players that are young and still on like rookie deals, and like Shug Sutton and Sika Kone. I don't think they acquired like future MVPs or anything like that, but I do think that both those players, like, if still have a lot of potential to develop into like really useful WNBA players. And anytime you can acquire players like that uh, at like a low cost, I think that's a good deal. Especially Sika Kone. I think like I well not no I love Shug too. I don't know why I'm saying especially. I love it. Like we've seen some great flashes from both of them. So I think that
Yeah.
this was a good overall move or moves plural by the Mystics.
Yeah, so there you have it. There's a trade deadline week in the W. Up next, we're going to catch up with some of the top teams in the league, as well as a surprise team that has come out with a couple of wins after the Olympic break. All right, let's look at these top three teams. We'll actually start. I won't start with the number one team. I want to start with the Connecticut Sun because they just played at a sold out TD Garden in Boston. They won that game. It was an incredible atmosphere. I wish I was there because I know the feeling of like playing in an NBA, or not me playing, but watching players play in an NBA arena. Like, don't get it twisted. Don't worry, I've never played anywhere like that. But watching players play in like a sold out NBA arena that has like nearly 20,000 people, it's like such a surreal feeling, and it seemed like the players really appreciated it. Before we get into the basketball part of it, I don't know if you saw, Cal, but like Dejanay Carrington had a couple of comments about kind of the promotion of the game and it being broadcasted on Twitter rather than having like a proper broadcast. For us in Canada, it was on League Pass. I don't think I've ever watched a WNBA game on Twitter in the time that they've announced Twitter as a partner because it's just always been on League Pass. So I'm like, I might as well just watch it on League Pass. But what are your thoughts on the whole thing? Because I feel like from my perspective, like from the Canadian perspective, when we've had those games like in at Scotiabank Arena, for example, for the Canada game, or like we have more important games like that, it feels like because there are less broadcasters up here that they do go all out in making sure that it's on TV and that it is more accessible. And I feel like we will get more games that are nationally broadcasted, especially when it's something as important as that. So like I'm curious maybe from like the American perspective, what did you think about this whole kind of debate about how that went?
I think I already said it on this pod what I think. WNBA get a WNBA. Like I'm with Dejanay. I first off, I've never watched a game on Twitter either. I don't know, like, I don't know if that's even possible on like a Roku or whatever on TV. Like, and I have the League Pass app on my TV. I might as well, like you said, just pull it up. But so I did watch this game and pulled it up on League Pass on my Roku, and I found myself thinking, why am I pulling this up on League Pass? Why am I not like just going to like a national TV channel? It doesn't make any sense. Like this is supposed to be a big deal, but they didn't make it a big deal, and it would have been really easy, I think, to make it a huge deal and market it and like publicize it more and have it more accessible. And yeah, I don't know. I just think they dropped the ball. Like this is just a microcosm of the league. What we always talk about, like they have such a good product, and like I was texting with Owen Pence, our friend, about this today, and like he is always so like vocal about it too, and always brings up good points. Like the jerseys, it's the same thing. Like you have a great product, like if you made how many people would buy these jerseys if you made them more accessible. Like just market your product. Like that's the bottom line. Like you have an awesome product, market it. And I feel like they didn't. So yeah, I went Dejanay on that one. I think they missed an opportunity.
Yeah, I feel like they made a big fuss of it when the news first dropped and they had like ticket sales go out because I remember hearing a lot more about it then. And then it just felt like we went through this long period of silence. And then it was all of a sudden, and it's like, I get it. It was like Olympics and other things happening. But it was like, oh, the game's happening like today or tomorrow or whatever. And it's like, oh, I forgot that this was actually going on. So it is an interesting point. I did want to shout out some of the social media teams because I did see some collabs with the Boston Celtics. And as somebody who has now worked in socials for the last like 8 months, I have a new appreciation for that stuff. So I do want to shout out the social teams and like the people who were there shooting content. But yeah, the broadcasting stuff still is a very much like ever changing issue. It feels like at times that is still being figured out. I'm hoping that with these new like media deals and stuff that it's going to continue to get better. But yeah, a sold out game in an NBA arena, it feels like that should have been propped up a little bit more. But shout out to the broadcast team as well. Brendan and everybody else absolutely killed it. Let's talk about the Sun because they did beat the Sparks. It was a close game. It was a close one. If we look at their record coming out of the break, they lost the game to Atlanta after they beat the Wings in their first game back. Like I said, they just beat the Sparks. They're now 20-7. Their upcoming schedule, they have the Sky, the Liberty, the Fever, the Mystics. And I think originally I would have been like, oh, like they've got this. Like Sky is a win, Fever's a win, Mystics a win. They dropped one to Atlanta coming out of the break. So now I'm kind of like, what do we think? What do we think that where this team is at? Marina Mabry is now in. She started in that game. Dewana Bonner sat on the bench on her birthday, which everybody loved to point that out. And I was like, how do you know that she didn't want that? Who knows what's going on? And then it came out after that it was a leadership move. But yeah, what are your kind of thoughts on this team now with the new look, with Marina Mabry finally in, and kind of just like their record coming out of the break and their upcoming schedule?
Yeah, I feel like they signed Marina Mabrey for offense, right? And then the very first game that she played, they exploded against the Dallas Wings, which is kind of like everyone does that. I guess it's expected. Like that's what the Dallas defense does. They give you 109. So, but even against Dallas, I felt like wow, the Connecticut Sun just scored 109. Like maybe this team, like this is gonna help. And obviously, like Marina Mabrey played great. And then they scored 70 and 69 in the next 2 games, even in this win, 69 to 61. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like they still are kind of in the early stages of figuring it out. And obviously, like you said, they've been kind of tinkering with the starting lineup. Like Dejanay missed a game, but then when she came back, like Ty Harris off the bench and then Dewana Bonner. So they do kind of have 6 starters, I think, which is good. It's a good problem to have if you're Stephanie White. And I think she's got the next month. At this point, like they're not catching the Liberty for the 1 seed. So just make sure you're in the 2-3 spot, and then the rest of the regular season is basically for you to kind of mesh this team together, mesh your new like Mabry with everyone else in the 6 starters, and figure out the best rotations, like who plays best with the bench or with the second unit, and so on and so forth, and have that all ironed out by the time you get to the playoffs, because you got a month to get to that point. And even like the games that they have coming up, like you said, maybe would have looked like easy wins, but now like Fever are playing a lot better, Mystics are healthy, maybe not gimmies. So like I think this team is really like that's kind of the focus the next several weeks. And still been some inconsistencies through the first 3 games, but I think that they'll figure it out and they have a really high ceiling.
Yeah, and there's also the factor of, like, you're coming back from the break as well, just getting back into the swing of things, but yeah, I think I totally agree with you with that, with just kind of, like, building out your roster and your lineups and figuring out what works best. This is so random, but before we move on to the next team, I really wanna know, like, how many buzzer beaters Ty Harris has hit this season, because it feels like she always has one at the end of, like, right before halftime or at the end of, like, a quarter. I feel like I'm always, like, screaming, like, oh my god, like, she just, like, makes these buzzer beaters at the end of the quarter. Are you searching it right now?
I am. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, keep talking.
Yeah, because she hit one in that game, against Sparks at the I
Yeah,
think it
end
was
of the
right
second
before
quarter, right?
halftime.
I think it's
Yeah,
yeah.
or yeah, end of the second quarter, and I was like, "This is, like, insane." Like, she shoots it, and I'm like, "It's literally going to go in," because I feel like I've seen so many of them. Maybe I'm, like, tripping, but I feel like she's, like, up there for, like, one of the players that has hit the most, like, buzzer beater end of quarter shots,
Yeah,
um, this
yeah.
season. But
No,
yeah.
it does feel like that. She has a great feel for clock awareness. I always love players who are like that, by the way, who have like it annoys me the other way, and then I love it when they are smart. It annoys me when there's like 5 seconds left and they shoot from like half court or whatever when you had time to get a better shot, right? Or when they like
Yeah.
don't get a shot off at the end of the half or the end of the quarter. But players who have that clock feel like it could be huge. And I looked up, so I don't have buzzer beater. I might be able to do some more digging and find that later. But last 4 seconds, she has made 10 shots this year, which feels pretty good.
That's very good. Could never be me. Never have that type of composure. So yeah, I just wanted to give a quick random shout out to that because it's just so fun to watch players. You're right. You're right. It's so annoying when it's like the awareness of the clock isn't there, but it's so fun when it is. So yeah, shout out Ty Harris. I tweeted a really bad pun of her name during that game, but we'll move past it. It's fine. All right. Let's talk about the New York Liberty, who, like we mentioned, will play the Connecticut Sun this weekend. They're the first team to clinch a playoff spot in that number 1 seed right now. They beat the Las Vegas Aces, which was the big one. Their next couple of games, they face the Wings again after beating them just recently, the Sun, like I mentioned, the Mercury, the Sparks, the Storm. This is a team that I think you could say is probably one of the most intriguing teams in the league right now. Just like watching them piece it together has been so fun. And they've been missing a couple of players here and there. Obviously, missing Benija. They missed Sabrina in the last game with something with her neck. I don't even know what it was fully, but I saw the injury report say neck and I was like, oh, I wonder what happened. But they missed Sab in the last game. And I was just like, they handled business. They took care of business really well. And I'm really interested to see how they kind of do with this upcoming schedule for the rest of August before going into September. But what have been your thoughts on the New York Liberty and kind of how they've pieced it together so far?
They've been so impressive to me with everything that you just said because this wasn't a team that I would have come into the season and saying like, "Wow, this team is way more talented than they were last year. Wow, this team is a lot deeper." Like, I granted, like I was not as familiar with Leonie Phoebish as I should have been, coming over from overseas. But
I hope
this
she's
is,
okay too, by the way,
yeah,
because
yeah, another one.
yeah, she got hit in that last game. Kind of looked like the wind was knocked out of her, but hoping she's all right.
Yeah, me too, because I've grown to like her a lot as I've watched her this season. But it's so impressive to me how it feels like the Liberty. I don't know. I never really felt like they were a super deep team, but then they keep having these different injuries and absences, and like Sloot obviously missed some time, and she's past her prime now at this point. And then like you said, Sab missed the last game. Like Benijah has missed some time, and every time, and now like Leo as well. It just kind of feels like it doesn't matter. Like it obviously like does matter, but they just keep winning and they keep winning fairly comfortably. Like they went into Las Vegas, won by 10 or 12. They played the Wings, who obviously they were expected to beat, but ran away with that game without Sab, without Benijah. Like JJ and Stewie have been rocks for this team, and even when Stewie's shot hasn't been falling this year, has obviously still been one of the better players in the world. But this team, what they've been able to do, just depth wise, and like Kayla Thornton and different players like that stepping up, Kennedy Burke, like it's been very, very impressive to me and exceeded what I would have expected if you told me coming in the season that they were going to deal with some of these injuries.
Yeah, I think that's a really key point. They're doing a thing. They're doing a thing. And I'm going to continue my shout outs for the social media teams because the New York Liberty social media team might be one of the best in the league. Like, I don't know if you guys have gone to their TikTok page, but Kennedy Burke and Kayla Thornton are my absolute favorite duo ever. Like on the court, they're great. Off the court, they're even better. Like it's actually their chemistry is really, really fun to see. And I'm sure that's like playing a huge factor into like the on-court results of this team this season too. So go check out their social pages because you could literally watch them for hours. But shout out to New York. They're doing a thing right now. They are like the team to watch right now, including some of these other top teams. Let's talk about the Minnesota Lynx because they have also been really intriguing. I feel like we don't have really a lot of bad things to say about a lot of these top teams. So they're all super fun. They're all super exciting. They are in third place right now. They had two easy wins against the Mystics after the break. They do play the Aces the night that we are recording this. So we will know the result the next morning, but they will see them again. So they got two chances against them. To me, this is important for the standings. This is also important to see where this team stacks against the top contenders, against the Aces specifically, and then also just being in the mix with, the Sun and the Liberty and all of that. What are your thoughts on that and kind of like how we evaluate the Minnesota Lynx after this next couple stretch of games?
Yeah, it's really cool that they get to, go play Las Vegas like right after the Maisha Hines Allen trade. And just as a side note, like I mean, you said we have positive things to say about these teams. Well, it's because all these teams keep making themselves better, and that's been the cool
Yeah.
story of this season. I think is like everyone knows like Aces have won 2 championships in a row. Like it's their throne until someone knocks them off, and everyone is putting all their chips on the table and said we're coming for the Aces. Obviously like New York has been at the top of the standings all year, but Connecticut goes and gets Marina Mabry. The Lynx go and get Maisha Hines Allen. Like the Storm go get Gabby Williams. All of these teams are at the trade deadline or like in the last several weeks are like we are going to go fortify our roster anymore because we are coming for that. Like we're not messing around. We're not waiting. Like so many teams. I would say the big five are all like very, very much in contention, and the Lynx are right in that mix. So this week's going to be really important. Obviously, like you said, the first game against the Aces will be done by the time you're listening to this. I don't think the Lynx are going to sweep both of these games in the back to back. I think that uh, they would probably be happy with 1-1. Honestly, they wouldn't tell you that, but I think realistically, if you're a Lynx fan, you feel good about 1-1. But if they somehow do sweep this week, they more or less lock up a top 3 seed, which solidifies the Aces versus the Liberty in the semis, most likely, instead of the finals, which would be wild. Aces in the 4 seed right now, 1.5 games back of the Lynx, so they absolutely have to win at least one of these. Be really helpful for them to win both. So it's a huge, huge week for both these teams and for those matchups, just because of not only the cut line where like you don't want to play the Liberty in the 1 versus 4, 1 versus 5 in the semis, but you also, because of what I said, I feel like there's kind of a big five with these two teams, and then the Sun and the Storm and the Liberty. Like you also don't want to be in that 4 versus 5 game because that's going to be the toughest knockout drag out first round matchup. And whereas like the Liberty are gonna get to play, maybe the Sky, maybe the Dream. We're gonna talk about that in a minute. Probably gonna have a little bit of easier time in the first round. Like no shade to those teams. So, but whoever comes out of that 4-5 is gonna be like tested and beat up, and so you kind of want to avoid that matchup too. I think.
Yeah. Oh my god, it's actually gonna be crazy. So yeah, if you don't have those games circled on your calendar, please do. Lynx versus Aces, probably one of the most like important matchups of the week. And the good news is you get to watch it twice. So if you miss it the first time, catch it the second time. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if any of them sweep each other or if it does go 1-1. I'm hoping for the chaos that it goes 1-1, and I'm sure the Lynx, like you said, are also hoping for 1-1. Or we'll be happy for 1-1, not hoping for 1-1 because they're hoping for 2-0. But yeah. Anyway, let's another team that you just hinted at before we move on to games to watch for the week, and that is none other than the Atlanta Dream. They've pieced together some close wins. Okay, we finally are seeing like the potential of this group being able to close out games, and the reason we're seeing it, Cal, is because of the lineups. They're healthy. Wow, what a concept!
Who would
What a
have thought?
concept! Who would have thought that when all of your players are healthy, you can actually play together and put together some good, solid wins? But what have you thought about the Atlanta Dream and kind of how they've come out of this Olympic break so far?
Yeah, you gotta feel bad for them that they went and signed Jordan Canada, who fit perfectly and was a great addition. And then she missed time, and then the terrible timing of Ryan missing time when Jordan Canada comes back. But we finally have them both playing together the last 2 games, and this is against good opponents too. This is against Seattle and Connecticut the last 2 games. Got to win in both of them. So they're 2-0 with those two playing together. They've only played 29 minutes together, so it's not like this is some crazy sample, but their offensive rating, 110, would be the best in the league. The offensive rating in those 29 minutes is better than anyone's offensive rating this year. Net rating, plus 15, would be the best in the league. So, in the minutes that they have played together, they have looked like a legitimately top tier team. I don't think they actually are like in that tier with those 5 that we talked about, but I do think what we talked about on our last pod before the Olympic break, where we were going to be watching the Dream pretty closely coming out of the break because they were in ninth and they were a few games back, and they had every opportunity to either kind of make that push, close the gap for the 8 seed, or kind of fold up shop and get into that lottery. And it's pretty clear which one of those routes they're going. They're making that push, and the Sky vibes have not been great coming out of the break either, holding on to that 8 seed. So I think the Dream, now they're only 1.5 back. They have every opportunity to sneak into that 8 spot, I think, and pass up the Sky the way that they're playing. That's another team who's going to play tonight, and you'll know the result by the time you're listening to this against the Mercury. They win that one. That's 3-0 against teams above them in the standings, coming out of the break. And the Dream host the Sky the last weekend of the regular season. And it's shaping up to be, and what I really hope it is, basically that game for a playoff spot. That would be so lit.
Oh, we're getting it. Like this has
Yes.
happened like every single year for the
Yes.
last like 3 seasons. So like it's totally happening. You can just lock that in right now.
I would love it. I love those kind of like winner take all type of matchups in sports at the end of regular seasons when it's like the
Remember
playoffs
remember
before
when
the
we said they
playoffs.
like to go remember when we said they like to go down to the last minute? That
Yeah,
100% goes with regular season basketball
exactly.
and who makes those final spots of the
Yeah.
playoffs.
Yep, especially in the
Um,
WNBA with only 12 teams. There's always a tight race somewhere.
and can you imagine when next year we get another team thrown into the mix? Can't wait
Yes.
to see that. But yeah, there you go. The Atlanta Dream, 2 very solid wins, potentially another solid win when you're listening to this. But They're doing good. They're doing good out of the break. So let us know who you think is going to make that playoff push, and who you think will end up grabbing that ultimate final spot for the first round. Let us know in the comments of YouTube, because this is my second YouTube plug of the podcast, and you should definitely be watching us on YouTube if you're listening to Coast to Coast. Consider it a birthday present. All right, let's go into the games to watch for this week. Since it is Thursday when you are listening to this, there is a matchup: Wings versus Liberty at 7 p.m. Eastern on Prime. Friday is Fridays on Ion, so all these games will be on Ion or League Pass. If you don't have that, it will be Mercury versus Dream, as well as Sky versus Sun at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. You got to get out the double screens, and then triple screens. What am I talking about? Because Sparks versus Six is also at 7:30 p.m. Eastern.
WNBA get a WNBA. Schedule makers.
Yeah, I was triple screening this week, and I was like, this is fun because this is, for the most part, it's like how my brain operates. I need to have a million things going on, but at one point or another, it gets a little bit overwhelming. But it's basketball, so it's all good. And then Friday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, is that second matchup between the Aces versus the Lynx that we just mentioned. Cal, if you had to circle one game on the calendar over the weekend, what would it be? Over the weekend for me would be Sun versus Liberty, for all the reasons that we talked about. Even on this podcast before, the Liberty are the one team the Sun seem to continue to have trouble with. And so when it comes to just like playing against each other, like our conversation about all the top contenders, really interested to see them face off. But do you have any games circled on your calendar for this week?
Yeah, well, definitely that one was gonna be mine for like the reasons you said, and I mean, literally, like the Sun went and got Marina Mabry after they lost to New York in 2 of their last 3 games. Like, it could not be more clear. Like, this is why, obviously, they signed her to make their team better, but specifically to help them beat the New York Liberties. So, first chance to see her against New York in a Sun uniform. But in the interest of picking a different game than you, I'm gonna say another one that we already talked about, Aces Lynx Game 2, because Game 1 will already be over, and I'm looking forward to both. But yeah, like I'm very excited to see how Maisha Hines Allen kind of fits into this team. I think that she's a great fit and gives them a lot of depth. And also, like, we haven't seen Chelsea Gray yet against this incredible Lynx defense that's been one of the either best or second best defense really like all year long. And the first 2 times they played, she wasn't back yet. So getting to see that, obviously Chelsea Gray kind of like still hasn't really been herself, even I think since coming back, at least scoring wise. And hopefully she gets there at some point. But she does obviously give this team like an added dimension that they didn't have the last 2 times they played the Lynx. So definitely excited for these 2 matchups as well. It's really cool seeing these contenders kind of all like go up against each other.
Yeah, 100% agree. If you're going to watch any games this week/weekend, make it Aces Lynx and Sun Liberty, but watch all the games that we did mention. Yeah, that concludes the 1-year anniversary of Coast to Coast. I posted this on Twitter, but I'm saying it again. We do have a new release date. Episodes will now release Thursdays weekly, as opposed to our previous Tuesday release. So make sure you're subscribed to Her Hoop Stats wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube. You can follow us on social media as well at Her Hoop Stats to be notified when episodes drop. You can follow myself at Crina MM, Calvin at Wetzel 31, and we will see you next week.